Good afternoon and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Secretary, will you please take roll?
Assemblywoman Backus.
Present.
Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblywoman Duran.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy. Assemblywoman Howdigy.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kisama.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager. Assemblyman Urick. Chair Marzola.
I am here. Please mark Assemblyman Yeager absent excused and mark all members present as they come in. Welcome everyone that is here in Carson City, anyone listening over the internet, and I don't believe we have anyone in Las Vegas today. We will be hearing Senate Bill 163. That is the only bill on the agenda today. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone either turns off or silences their electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please make sure you sign in by the door. If you have any handouts for the committee, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary. When testifying, please remember to turn on your microphone and clearly state and spell your name for the record. As always, I expect courtesy and respect our interactions, even if we may not agree. And with that, we will move to our first agenda item, Senate Bill 163. I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 163, which requires certain health insurance to cover treatment of certain conditions relating to gender dysphoria and gender incongruence. And Senator, before you get started, I just wanted to give a lay of the land today. I am going to limit testimony to 30 minutes in support, 30 minutes in opposition, 30 minutes in neutral. I don't believe we have anybody in Las Vegas today. And with that, you may begin when you're ready.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Melanie Scheibel. I'm the state senator for District 9, here to present SB 163 to you today. I'm joined by Brooke Maylath, and I don't think our presenters are on Zoom today. If they do pop in, Cy Burnaby from Gender Justice and Rob Phoenix from the Hunter Ridge Clinic might appear to help answer some questions. But I know that time is of the essence. It's a late hour. I don't want to I don't want to waste any of your time. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what the bill does and then walk through it with you. I know that it looks lengthy, but most of the provisions are contained in the first 5 pages, and then they're just repeated throughout different sections of the Nevada revised statutes in order to make them apply to all the various different kinds of health insurance plans that are covered in the Nevada revised statutes, PPOs and HMOs and public plans and private plans and plans that started on Tuesdays and plans that started on Thursdays. There are so many that you understand because you all sit on Commerce and Labor. So the purpose of SB 163 is to ensure that for anybody who is covered by a health insurance plan, that health insurance plan is prohibited from discriminating against them based on their gender identity or expression. So whatever procedures, treatments, surgeries they provide for people who are cisgender, in other words, people who identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, if they provide services for that person, they also have to provide them for somebody who is trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming. The language in this in this bill has been modeled off of statutes that have been passed in other states, as well as some health plans from within the state of Nevada. So I'm going to jump right in and walk you through the sections of the bill, starting with section 1.3. 1.3 probably has the bulk of the language in it, and section 1 basically says that a health insurance plan has to cover a certain gender affirming care. It includes a list of providers that care might come from. It's not exhaustive, but it's also not exclusive. So it's modeled off of another Hawaii's statute to provide kind of some guidelines rather than leaving it exceptionally vague and just saying you have to cover gender affirming care. It lists the kinds of care the kinds of providers who are often involved in gender affirming care. That is subsection 1. Subsection 2 is a very important and specific carve out to ensure that no insurance policy is on the hook for a cosmetic procedure, and a cosmetic procedure is defined later in the bill. And so the purpose of this is not to allow anybody to exploit their health insurance policy to get some kind of, surgery to enhance their features, be they on their face or their reproductive organs. The purpose is that somebody who has been treated by a doctor, and that doctor or other medical, well, in the case of surgery, it would be a doctor, has determined that surgery is medically necessary for that person and prescribes it, then the insurance company would have to cover that procedure. If it is not medically necessary, the insurer would not have to cover it. And I will get into the contours of medically necessary as I work through the bill. Moving to subsection 3 on the top of page 3, prohibits an insurer from making a blanket exception, or just avoiding the purpose of the law by having a blanket exclusion for gender-affirming care. We have seen that in other states, and so that's the purpose of having subsection 3 in there. Subsection 4 is the section that pertains to people who are under the age of 18. I did consider bringing this bill without subsection 4 in it. Without subsection 4, the bill as it applies to adults would be the same for children, because generally when we pass a law in the state of Nevada about health insurance policies, they apply the same to adults and children. So just to give you an example, every time we alter the step therapy exceptions, we don't write into law for adult patients they must do X, Y, and Z, and for juvenile patients, they must do A, B, and C. We set one standard for insurers that says if a doctor says that this patient needs to be exempted from the step therapy, then this doctor is able to have that patient exempted whether the patient is 2 months old or 200 years old. We did not want to do that with gender-affirming care because I understand the complexities of this issue and the concerns that were raised by both medical professionals and my colleagues throughout this body. And so what Section 4 says is that for a minor, the insurer can implement stricter guidelines than they do for adults. For minors, they can require those 5 things that are listed in the subsections. They can require treatment by a psychologist. They can require treatment by a physician in addition to a psychologist. They can require the minor to provide a written request. They can require a 1-year plan, and parental consent is required. Parental consent is already required under Nevada law. No insurance plan can exempt a treatment from the parental consent requirements of NRS 129. And so subsection 4, Part E, ensures that there is no difference in gender-affirming care than any other type of care when it comes to obtaining parental consent for the treatment of a person who is under 18. Subsection number 5 gives us a reference point to talk about what kinds of treatments and procedures should and would be included by those insurance policies. And so when I talked earlier about medically necessary care, and I talked earlier about the kinds of providers who might provide that medically necessary care, we utilize the WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, as the clearinghouse, the professional organization that sets those standards. And so instead of having us, politicians, debate and say, hey, a hormone therapy at this level is appropriate for a 21-year-old person, or a hormone therapy at that level is appropriate for a 35-year-old person, the WPATH outlines the standard of care that the insurance company can and should and has to comply with. The WPATH doesn't set out what kinds of treatments people have to undergo. It doesn't set out what the insurance company has to cover or can't cover, but it provides a standard in law other than go to court and fight about it for everybody to refer to. Subsection number 6 simply requires that an insurance company make an effort to include people in their their network who provides services, and specifies that if they don't have an in-network provider, those claims will be treated like any other out-of-network claim. Section 7 simply requires that if the insured person appeals the decision of the insurance company to cover their care, that their appellate procedure has to include somebody who is informed on gender-affirming care, who practices in that area, to sit on the panel or committee that reviews appeals. Subsection 8 is the enacting language, enacting this in July 1st of this year. And then subsection 9 are the definitions. I'm not going to read all of them to you because I know that you all know how to read, but I do understand there may be questions on them, so I'll just leave it to you to tell me where the questions are, what I can clarify, and not waste your time by reading them to you. That takes us to section 5, or sorry, page 5, where there is one more section to the bill with, real policy thrust, and that's section 1.6. And section 1.6 is the non-discrimination clause, which clarifies that if somebody is already covered by an insurance policy, and it has not been receiving gender-affirming care, and they decide to start seeking gender-affirming care, the insurance company can't cancel their policy, raise their rates, deny them coverage, because they have decided to seek gender-affirming care, or because the insurance company has become aware that somebody is trans or is non-binary, which may happen, especially when you're talking about employer-sponsored health care. It might not be that they're seeking any kind of different health care. It might be that in the workplace they have changed their pronouns or changed their name, and so it would be prohibited for the insurance company to stop covering that person once they found out about that change in their life. The rest of the bill, as I indicated before, repeats those same sections verbatim in the different chapters of the NRS that address health insurance policies. So I won't continue to go through them, and I will turn it over to my co-presenters to give you a little bit more context about the importance of this care and this policy. Sure, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Phoenix, if that's okay with you.
Of course, Mr. Phoenix. Remember to state and spell your name for the record, and you can begin when you're ready.
Hi, my name is John Phoenix. My preferred name is Rob. My pronouns are he and him, and I am here as a medical expert on gender-affirming care. I own and operate the Huntridge Family Clinic, and I am here representing the patients that I provide care for in Las Vegas and Southern Nevada as the largest provider of gender-affirming care. And I'm here to answer any questions that the committee has. I just want to be respectful of the time of the committee, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Brooke Malath. For transparency, I am employed by the state of Nevada, but my testimony is in no way the position of my employer or any organization. I am here speaking on my own behalf. So why am I here? Why have I brought this bill forward for a second session? The fact is I have privilege, and I'm compelled to speak for those who have a distinct lack of privilege. My path that led to me sitting in this seat has had many challenges. I was born transgender in a time which lacked understanding and when simply being opposed to war was considered radical. I've experienced a lifetime of dealing with gender dysphoria and internal discomfort in my body and soul and how I interact in our society. With this has come stigma and exploitation, of heartbreak, of poverty, of hope and despair. I've lost jobs. I've lost family. I've lost health care. I've lost life opportunities due to being transgender. I've experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, rape, suicide attempts, and threats to my life. I've experienced threats of violence in this building. I've endured attacks from those who have chosen to vilify and dehumanize me and people like me by spreading intentional lies and disinformation. And I remind you, I have privilege. That's why I'm here, to put voice to the needs of those who have not had the privileges that I have had. That's what community does. It supports one another. It's due to finally being able to access health care that I'm able to be here today. That's what SB 163 is about, allowing transgender people to access medically necessary health care to treat gender dysphoria. Medical treatment to provide certain procedures have long been classified as cosmetic, as an arbitrary administrative method to deny coverage. This bill requires health plans to appropriately evaluate such procedures along an agreed-upon international standard to determine if the procedure is medically necessary on a case-by-case basis. There has been no opposition from industry on this bill. Companies have recognized maintaining these exclusions have been failing when contested in our courts, incurring huge penalties and legal costs for all. Let's codify inclusive medically necessary coverage and put those dollars to patient care for the betterment of all. Let's pass this bill. Let's allow those who experience life differently than you a chance to access the health care they need and have hope to achieve the inner peace that we all hope for. Please support this community. Thank you for listening. Thank you for voting yes on this bill. A yes vote saves lives.
And we're open for any questions.
Thank you. We will start. Committee members, any questions? Assemblyman O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the time. I just have one question, and at least I think I do. Do you have, or what would be, do you know the rate of children that experience general dysphoria that actually grow out of it as they go through puberty or get older, become adults? Is there any tracking of that information?
The tracking is, for the record, Brooke Malath. The data is thin. To the best of our knowledge, it is less than 1%. It is a very significantly low number. Regret, lifetime regret from being allowed the chance to at least have social transition and perhaps access to puberty blockers allows people to get to an age that they can be able to make a qualified and informed consent. The history of administration of healthcare in this state is that until the age of 18, treatment is social, it's acceptance and affirmation, and it is puberty blockers. On very rare occasions, there may be cross-gender hormone therapy that starts at 16 or so. It's a case-by-case scenario when other alternatives have been exhausted. When we're looking at kids that are suicidal, this is life-saving. Surgical options, to the best of my knowledge, have never been performed in Nevada for under the age of 18. Now, the same cannot be said for cisgender girls of having rhinoplasty or breast augmentation. And we're not even, there's no prohibition on that, and those are done, as a cosmetic procedure on girls as young as 13. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a multidisciplinary medical team with parents, with behavioral health, with primary care, to be able to understand what the needs of that individual are and be able to make a decision on what's medically necessary for that individual, whether that individual is under the age of 18 or over. These are the pathways, these are the checks and balances that we've built into this bill so that it's not just an automatic write a check. We want there to be the appropriate checks and balances for everybody's sake. We're just trying to keep people alive.
May I follow up, Chair? So you said it was less than 1% of X number of youth that have this dysphoria. Is there negative repercussions to them that 1% that they're unable to change? Does it have a lifelong effect on their, I don't want mistaken decision?
And I believe Mr. Phoenix also wants to, is it?
Yep. So, hi, thank you, Chair. John Phoenix for the record. So, speaking as the medical provider providing care to adolescents that are in this kind of gray area between, 8 is the youngest child that I've taken care of, all the way up to age 18. One of the advantages of this bill, it allows us to help access services for kids. One of those being puberty suppression medications, which in essence puts a pause on the development of the secondary sex characteristics, which is so dysphoria producing for many of these adolescents. And when we get to the point where it's like, if they are in that 1% who do decide that this is not the transition path that they want, we stop the puberty suppression medication and puberty just kind of picks up where they left off. And they would be considered like a late bloomer. Everybody goes through puberty in different phases. So like think back to your puberty, there were some kids in your high school and middle school that got beards much faster than you did or had deeper voices. And that's essentially where these kids would fall in. The advantage to that is it does not stop their physical growth. So they will continue to have expansion of their chest cavity, their physical features, but it does prevent the breast development, the genitalia development, the onset of menses if they were assigned female at birth. And it also helps us get to a point where we can support them through counseling, help with the harmful behaviors of cutting, suicide, ideations, attempts, depression, all the significant negative impacts that these adolescents are experiencing, which oftentimes get extremely better as they're able to access these services. Thank you.
I'm confused. For clarification, doctor, so you're saying the
Yeah.
1% children that want to return back to their original biological position do cutting, suffer suicidal thoughts, and you treat them too? So there are some negatives to this mistaken decision that they've made, then, if I understand you correctly.
So John Phoenix for the record. So in this population, there are very high rates of suicidal ideation, depression. Many of these adolescents experience these symptoms. Many of these adolescents come in with a history of cutting, which is a behavior aimed at relieving pain. It's not an attempt to injure themselves. It's an attempt to relieve pain.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
And
Rob, when you say this population, you're referring to all adolescents who experience gender dysphoria, right? The whole population
correct.
of adolescents with gender dysphoria.
I just want to talk about
Yes.
the population, and thank you, Senator, for helping me there. I just want to talk about the population that have changed their mind, for lack of a better term, and wish to be back to their original biological position.
Melanie,
That's what I'm asking about. What are the effects to them if they've started this transition and then want to go back?
Melanie Scheibel, for the record, I think I can be a little bit more blunt than my colleague from the Hunt Ridge Clinic and say they're fine. And that's because we are moving to a model of gender affirming care. And what gender affirming means is not that a person, be they a child or an adult, walks into their doctor's office one day and says on day one, my plan is to switch from being a boy to being a girl. It is that a child comes into the doctor's office, and from the time that they're 7 or 8, maybe they have, what we consider male genitalia, but they want to be called Karen and use she, her pronouns. And it's about having a system of care where their doctor says, okay, well, you still need a flu shot. And where their doctor says, okay, well, let's check your eyesight. And then at some point, as they get older, gender affirming care means that the whole team decides what is best for this particular child. And that can change. And part of gender affirming care is being okay with that. A child who is 12 or 13 might not be sure what is going on in their body. For plenty of cisgender kids, it is very confusing what is going on with their bodies and how they are going to adjust to that and respond to that. And so the purpose of being able to provide and cover gender affirming care is to ensure that wherever a kid is and whatever they're thinking and feeling, their medical providers don't say, no, you're wrong, you're bad, stop doing that, stop thinking that, stop feeling that, because that's when we start seeing all of the negative impacts that my colleague was talking about, the cutting, the self-harm, the suicidal ideation. By providing gender affirming care, we provide kids with the possibility for whatever they're going to do when they grow up. And so it is absolutely possible. It is exceedingly rare, but absolutely possible that when a child is 13 or 14, what the medical team decides is this kid really doesn't want to develop breasts and doesn't want to look womanly, and so they start the puberty blockers. And it's possible by the time that child is 17, they've gone through more therapy, they've experienced more life, they realize, actually, I am okay with that, I am ready for that, and they stop the puberty blockers. And so even though that person's friends might have been growing breasts when they were 13 or 14, this one grows them at 17 or 18, and by the time they go to college, they look the same as their peers, they develop the same as their peers, and they are no worse off than a child who was told throughout that incredibly difficult period from the time they were 13 to 17, no, you're wrong, get over it, this is normal, this happens. That is when kids die. That is when they die.
Thank you, Senator. I truly appreciate it, and thank you for the time and all the follow-up questions.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Brooke Malath, and just to elaborate a little bit more, that less than 1% that may detransition. Anecdotally, what we know is that the reasons for detransition don't really come from within. It comes from having to deal with the stigma and the attacks and the marginalization that is, that messaging that is sent from an unwelcoming society. And it's hard to transition, and these kids, before they're even, recommended for anything more than therapy, is insistence, persistence, and consistence. As Senator Scheibel said, these things don't come overnight and just all of a sudden a light bulb goes off. There is a pattern that, for months, years, that this child, this adult, is aware of who they are, and they're telling us. Those puberty blockers do not have lifelong effects. What we know is that when they come off of a puberty blocker, if they choose to detransition, they go through a normal puberty a few years later. The growth platelets, the bone platelets, fuse as normal. By the age of 28, they have caught up to their peers. There's no lifetime long bad results that come out of this. We have the studies to prove it. Occasionally, we have seen in the past year or so detransitioners that have been brought out and paraded around. And when we dig in and we look at what those stories actually are, they made informed consent decisions, usually around the age of 18, the age of majority. They are being scripted and paid tens of thousands of dollars to deliver anti-transgender medical poppycock to be able to sway certain people to vote and try to be able to practice medicine from the legislative bench rather than listening to every major medical organization in the United States and the combined wisdom and studies and medical outcomes from 140 nations and medical providers from around the world. This is life-saving treatment. It needs to be covered by insurance. The bill does not cover what the medical procedures are done, because those are being done by qualified providers like Rob Phoenix. Okay? They understand what the risks are, what the medical needs are, what the outcomes are, and are able to monitor that person, no matter the age, for what their total health is. That's what we want. That's what you want for yourself, for your body. That's what we're asking for ours. That our medical needs, for insurance that we're paying into, whether it's through our employer, we're still paying into it. This is a consumer protection bill as much as anything else. We need medical access to our needs, the same as what you need medical access for your particular needs. Ours happen to be just a little bit different. But it's life-saving access. And that's all we're asking for.
Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I have kind of two questions. One, I have a question for Dr. Phoenix. I don't know if your clinic also provides mental health care, but I was kind of curious about that, because when I saw this bill, I also thought of it as a big mental health bill, is what I went to. And I started doing research and realized gender dysphoria is listed as a DSM-5 category, but I also know that there's a lot of mental health that is listed in the DSM-5 and it gets denied by insurance. And so I was kind of curious, Dr. Phoenix, if you're seeing in your clinic or otherwise, where if a patient comes in, whether an adult or a child, for mental health care, and their diagnostic code matches gender dysphoria, are you seeing insurance carriers denying coverage for that care?
So John Phoenix for the record. So when it comes to the coverage of mental health care, no, we're not seeing denials. Where we're seeing the denials are around the medical care. So around access to medications for gender transition, estrogens, testosterone, the different formulations of estrogens or testosterones. So like one insurance company might cover a pill, but they won't cover an injection. So it takes away some patient choice. They might cover a formulation of testosterone that a patient can't do because they have a fear of needles. Just like I'm a diabetic and I don't want to do injections because I just don't want to shoot myself with insulin every day. So I have alternates that I can do. So these are the challenges. The other things that we're seeing not covered are some of the affirming surgical procedures. So chest affirmation surgery. So if you were assigned female at birth, having breast reduction surgery, having the laser hair removal that needs to happen when you have chest augmentation surgery. So if you're a trans woman and you just happen to have a lot of body hair, insurances don't cover the laser hair removal or the other procedures to remove hair. So like you could have a tuft of hair in the center of your chest, and that would have to either be paid for out of your pocket or not be covered. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing not covered by this. But mental health care, by and large, is very well covered by insurances for this.
I really appreciate that because all I keep thinking is because I kind of estimate how old Brooke is and anticipate when she was probably a child that one, parents probably didn't take you to like any mental health care, or it probably wasn't talked about, or just different time period. And so I was concerned about that, but and now I see also on this side, if I went to a provider, I'm of that wonderful age where I'm sure people would be giving me estrogen left and right, and my insurance would cover it. And so I appreciate the candor with that, because it really highlights the difference of me being a middle-aged woman going through a time where I keep getting offered these drugs versus someone else who may need it because a doctor says, no, this is appropriate for you, and insurance and denying it because it may be someone who's experiencing gender dysphoria and in need of estrogen for other treatment that insurance carriers are now not seeing appropriate. So thank you so much for that. And I just want to thank Brooke, because I know these conversations aren't had that often, and the mental health side of it, especially for children. And I'm glad you're standing here and raising it, because I'm assuming you've had a lifelong experience of gender dysphoria, and now you get to be who you are today. And so I'm happy that you brought this bill again. Thanks.
Thank you. For the record, Brooke Malath. Addressing the mental health challenges, it's important to recognize that gender dysphoria, though it is in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, version 5, that is used by psychologists and psychiatrists to diagnose and direct treatment. Gender dysphoria is not a mental disorder. That's why it's called dysphoria. It is treatable. It can be treated through behavioral health and medical intervention to the point where you no longer need that type of behavioral health intervention. It's a good thing. It decreases cost in the long run. Those that want to say that being transgender is a mental disease are wrong. The DSM-5 was changed in 2013. It was, the mental disorder categorization of homosexuality was taken out in 1973. So it took a long time for them to figure it out about being transgender was not a mental disease. Those that say that it is are mistaken or deliberately lying to you. So keep that in mind if you hear that. The other really important thing that the behavioral health pathway has to help transgender people with dealing with the slings and arrows that we suffer from those that want to dehumanize us, that want to marginalize us, that want to call us crazy, that want to think that we are some strange unicorns from another planet. We're not. Transgender people have been around since before recorded time. Our first forms of writing go back to the Assyrian Empire in ancient Babylon on clay tablets. And there are references to transgender people, or what we now know as transgender people, on those clay tablets. So keep that in mind. In many ancient civilizations, including the ancient Assyrians, there was a place of honor and a specialness about people that lived in that place in between the gender binary. It allows us a different perspective on our society and able to see things in a different way, in a different light that may be able to illuminate a different shade of truth on how we treat others and how others are treated. That I hope over the past 10 years that I've been present in this building, that I've been able to bring forth. To be able to bring forth that kind of perspective and that kindness that we need to share with others. That no matter where we're from, no matter who we are. We all crave that love and acceptance, and that's what this bill does. It helps protect those that have been denied for so long and gives them a pathway of hope. So please allow them to live. Vote yes on this bill.
Assemblywoman Backus, did you have another question?
I just wanted to make sure that Brooke knew that I was not being disrespectful. I was okay, and that I was hoping that these services, if a child went to the right mental health care, that hopefully their provider puts them in with right contact of medical care. So I just want to make sure we were on the same page.
And if I could follow up, Melanie Scheibel, for the record, I think I know exactly what you were saying, Assemblywoman Backus, and I think there are a lot of things that we treat medically that we could benefit from expanding to include mental health care along with the medical treatment. I just think of, I testified yesterday in Health and Human Services. I don't know if any of you sit on that committee, or maybe it meets at the same time. But I testified yesterday about the Parkinson's disease registry because my dad was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. And, I don't think that they cover counseling or any kind of mental health services along with that diagnosis, but he certainly has a lot of adjustments to make in his life and in his thinking, and I think maybe it should. Maybe there are a lot of issues that are medical in nature that also require some mental health care, and I think that it's easier to see with gender dysphoria than with some of those other issues, but where we can address both and provide people with care, it is only going to make us healthier and make people improve our public health. Thank you.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any. So I'll give you a moment to step back so I can open testimony in support of Senate Bill 163. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes each.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Erika Castro, ERIKACASTRO, and I'm here to represent PLAN, the Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada, in support of this bill. We want to thank the sponsor because we know that gender-affirming care is life-saving care. As a queer woman who's part of the LGBTQ community, I'm standing here for our trans brothers and sisters, and I hope that you can also support our trans brothers and sisters across the state by supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Dakota Hoskins, DAKOTAHOSKINS, Political Director for SEIU Local 1107, and we're here in support of SB 163. SEIU 1107 represents over 9,000 nurses and healthcare professionals, and we believe that ending discrimination of people based on their gender identity, perceived gender identity, or gender dysphoria by health insurance providers is vital to ensure that these patients have the coverage and treatments they need. No one should have to go without health care or be rejected coverage, especially because of their gender identity. SB 163 aligns with SEIU's 1107's vision of fostering an inclusive community and workplace. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Leah Case here today on behalf of the National Alliance on Mental Illness Nevada chapter. NAMI Nevada is in support of SB 163, and just speaking particularly to the mental health aspect of this, we know that our trans community faces higher rates of suicide and death by suicide, drug issues, substance use issues, and when it comes to children, we often think we need to lead them where we want them to go. And that's not really the case, right? We all learn from the children in our lives, our children and the children of our friends and family. We need to create a safe space for them to explore who they are and help them get the help that they need when they need it. And this bill does require parental consent. It has protections in place, and we believe this is a great step forward in mental health care. Thank you.
Hello, Elise Monroy Marsala here on behalf of the Nevada Psychiatric Association. In 2020, the American Psychiatric Association actually took an official position on this issue, and it's very short, so I'm just going to read it into the record. The American Psychiatric Association supports treatment of trans and gender diverse youth and their families, including mental health services and, when indicated, puberty suppression and medical transition support. I put this on the record to the testifier, Ms. Malath's comments. I think sometimes when people are critical of this issue, they tend to use mental health treatment and psychiatric disorders in a way to try and undercut what's happening. So I thought it was really important that I put the American Psychiatric's official position on the record for you today. So thank you for allowing me the time to do that, and we urge your support of this bill. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Tony Ramirez for the record. With Make the Road, we are an immigrant or an organization that represents immigrant communities. We are here in support. We have a lot of members, in particular, that are part of the LGBTQ community, and I just want to echo again the testimony and support. And on behalf of us, our members, we are here in support. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 163 here in Carson City? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 163, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Paula Luna. I'm the operations manager at Battleborn Progress, and we are testifying in support of SB 163. We just want to echo everything that was said by the presenters. We think they did a great job explaining why this is such an essential legislation, and hope you all support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Leanne McAllister, Leann McAllister. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. The AAP works toward all children and adolescents, regardless of gender identity or expression, receiving care to promote optimal physical, mental, and social well-being. Any discrimination based on gender identity or expression, real or perceived, is damaging to the socioeconomic, emotional health of children, families, and society. Nevada AAP is in strong support of SB 163.
My name is Jamie Jacobs, Jayme Jacobs. I'm a transgender woman. Thank you for allowing me the time to discuss this critical issue. There is a troubling disparity of how insurance companies cover medically necessary procedures. Many medically necessary treatments originally developed and covered for cisgender individuals are being denied to transgender individuals when used for medically necessary gender-affirming care under the guise of being cosmetic or experimental. This is not only unfair, but it also contradicts many studies demonstrating the positive outcomes of gender-affirming care as endorsed by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH. Such denials of medically necessary care lead to health disparities, increased healthcare costs, and adverse impacts on mental health and job performance. I have been an employee of Clark County since 2006, and I'll briefly share one of my experiences with Clark County's insurance discrimination as a transgender employee. In 2019, I sought medically necessary gender-affirming care only to be denied by Clark County using their blanket exclusion for transgender employees, claiming it was cosmetic surgery and thereby not medically necessary. Despite my successful appeal, let me state that again, despite my appeal, which stated that the procedure was in fact medically necessary and should be covered, Clark County refused to accept the decision and claimed it to be, quote, error, quote. They offered a minor settlement payment, severely insufficient to cover my costs. They stated the payment was not to be considered as a covered benefit under the plan, and instead they reported it to the IRS as taxable income. I urge you to pass Senate Bill 163 to legislate for equitable health insurance coverage that includes medically necessary procedures regardless of gender identity. This would uphold the principles of fairness and equality, promote better health outcomes, and support more inclusive and productive workforce. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. This is Andre Wade, ANDREWADE, State Director for Service to Equality, Nevada statewide LGBTQ+ civil rights organization, and a member of the Nevada Equality Coalition, which consists of more than a dozen organizations across Nevada. In short, we are in full support of SB 163. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits, 766, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Wilkie, Wilkie, for the record, calling in support of Senate Bill 163. I want to thank Senator Scheibel for bringing this bill forward. As someone who believes in equal rights for everyone, I fully support this bill. This bill is an important step in ensuring that every individual in Nevada has access to quality health care that caters to their specific needs. Discrimination on the basis of gender identity or expression is unacceptable. We need to create a society where everyone, regardless of their gender identity or expression, can live a fulfilling and healthful life. This bill is essential for the well-being and dignity of transgender and non-binary individuals who deserve the same care and treatment as everybody else. In a time where many individuals are medically marginalized and disenfranchised, it is vital that we take proactive steps to ensure that everyone has access to specialized health care. This bill is a significant move towards achieving that goal, and I urge everyone on the committee to support it. Thank you.
Callers, if you've recently joined and like to testify in support of Senate Bill 163, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 163. Is there anyone here in Carson City? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state president of Nevada Families for Freedom. And we're all real tired, aren't we? So we'll just go forward. I wanted to mention that I was happy that this bill requires parental consent. This one doesn't, but the state law does. And I appreciated the senator for letting me understand that. I also appreciate the fact that this bill has extra protections in the part about insurance for children. I think that's very good. However, I disagree with taxpayer funding through Medicaid for sex change surgery and mandating insurance companies to do this. That's should be a decision for a private enterprise to make if they're determined to do that. I think that one of the things we heard today was about death threats in this very building. Well, that's a terrible thing, but it's happened to me in this building on this issue, similar issues more than once, and I had to be helped out of the building by the legislative police. So it's not a one-sided issue. Unfortunately, there are people who do not respect one another on many sides. In fact, last time we testified in this building, during this session on this bill, we were called by people who testified today several ugly names. So it's not a one-sided thing. But we do need to respect one another, and I believe in that. There's a lot of disagreement, and I didn't have time because I was here in the building and I wasn't at my apartment to get it out, to bring a lot of the disagreement about the statistics you've heard today. But if you want to take the time to look up, there's a lot of alternative information available, which I presented in testimony in the past. One of those was from a study by the Obama administration in which they reviewed the largest study from Sweden ever done on gender dysphoria. They found that sometime after the surgery had taken place, years maybe, that there was almost a 19-fold increase in the possible suicides. So there's suicides on the other side too, and we're concerned about that because we believe in life and we want people to make good decisions in their lives. Now, one of our problems with this bill is that it does not include any religious exemptions for medical providers or small businesses that may have religious objections.
Mrs. Hanson, if you can please wrap up your
I'm
testimony.
almost done, thank you. For religious objections to providing for sex change surgery. This is important. I've been told for years that we didn't need to worry about that, but we obviously do because it's not protected in this bill. We appreciate you listening today, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Callers, if you'd like to testify on Senate Bill 163, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. For the record, I'm Jim DeGraffenreid, Nevada's Republican National Committeeman, in opposition to Senate Bill 163 on behalf of the Nevada Republican Party. The 2010 Affordable Care Act roughly quadrupled health insurance premiums, primarily by eliminating medical underwriting and forcing consumers to purchase coverage that they would never need. For example, the Act famously requires maternity coverage even for policies sold to men. As an insurance professional, I almost daily see firsthand the devastation caused by these provisions. SB 163 continues this by forcing 100% of consumers to pay for coverage that only a small fraction of 1% of them will ever need. The fifth version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders estimates that up to 0.014% of males and 0.003% of females will be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Worse, SB 163 mandates that Medicaid will cover surgical treatment of gender dysphoria. There is no reason for Nevada taxpayers to pick up the tab for unproven treatments. However, the most disturbing feature of SB 163 is that it enables the exploitation of minors by the medical and education industries. The bill enables children to obtain permanent surgical procedures, and often the guidance given to them to permanently alter their bodies comes from those who profit from the procedures. And make no mistake, the changes are permanent. Common sense and science both tell us that the notion of, quote, pausing puberty with drugs like Lupron, which is also used to sterilize sex offenders, is nonsense. The rate of detransition is well in excess of 1%. An October 2022 article in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, Volume 107, Issue 10, references multiple studies showing detransition rates between 11% and 19% for trans feminine persons. The horrible experiences of those who attempt to detransition only to find that the changes are all too permanent are heartbreaking. Although there is disagreement in the medical field about the benefits and dangers of gender reassignment as a treatment for gender dysphoria, if consenting adults want to opt for the treatments described in SB 163, that's their call. They have the maturity and ability to properly consider the risks and benefits. But it is unconscionable to encourage permanent mutilation of children. To do so is simply child abuse. Please do not burden taxpayers and
Sir,
consumers
can you
with these
please wrap
added
up your
expenses
testimony?
and vote
Your 2
no
minutes is up.
on Senate Bill 163. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
One moment, Chair.
Hello, my name is Michael Ryan, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-R-Y-A-N. I'm a longtime resident of Nevada and Marine Corps veteran. There is no reason that the state of Nevada should be paying for surgical treatment of gender dysphoria. Biological sex happens at the point of conception, and there are fundamental differences between men and women. This bill will allow children to obtain permanent surgical procedures paid for by our tax dollars. Additionally, this bill allows the government to punish providers who refuse to comply with revocation of their certificate to operate. This in a time where Nevada has well-documented healthcare shortcomings. Please vote on Senate Bill. Please vote no on Senate Bill 163. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Chapman, and I'm the state treasurer of the Independent American Party. In the year 2004, the Guardian commissioned research from Birmingham University, which looked at more than 100 follow-up studies of post-operative transsexuals. Researchers found no conclusive evidence that gender reassignment is beneficial for patients. The trials were often flawed, with results skewed in favor of physical rather than therapeutic interventions. Potential complications of hormones and genital surgery, including deep vein thrombosis and incontinence, were also not always properly taken into account. Some studies failed to track patients. The study that Janine was talking about was A 2011 study by the Karolinski Institute in Sweden examined the outcomes of more than 300 patients over 3 decades. Its findings starkly contradict the activist narrative. Around 10 years after the surgery is when post-operative transsexual persons' mental health can begin to most rapidly deteriorate. Post-operative transsexuals also appear to be at the higher risk of killing themselves than comparable non-transgender peers. In a discussion of the largest and most robust study on sex reassignment, the Centers for Medical and Medicaid during the Obama administration pointed out, quote, the study identified increased mortality and psychiatric hospitalization compared to the matched controls. The mortality was primarily due to completed suicides, the 19 to 1-fold greater than in controlled suites, unquote. The American hospitals have large financial incentives to carry out all these procedures. In the United States, the sex reassignment surgery market is set to reach a market value of more than $1.5 billion by the year 2026. Some operations cost up to $53,700. Performing 50 of these a year would bring in $2.7 million. We don't want to see people dying.
Ma'am, can you please wrap up your
please vote
testimony?
no on this. Yes, please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. My name is Kathleen Palmer, Palmer. The medical industrial complex in Nevada is very excited about new opportunities to trans minor children and young adults. While hormones and surgical procedures are very lucrative, medical providers bear none of the responsibility or risk when these treatments fail and leave lifelong complications and injuries. The risk is borne by the victims and their families. For example, when a 13-year-old has a double mastectomy, what happens when this teen grows to be a woman and desires to breastfeed her child? Whilst cosmetically her breast could be restored, function has been lost forever. Amy Reed, a queer woman who worked as a case manager at the Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital, shares her experience. One of the saddest cases of detransition I witnessed was a teenage girl who was put on hormones when she was around 16. When she was 18, she had a double mastectomy. 3 months later, she called the surgeon's office to say she was going back to her birth name. She told the nurse, "I want my breast back." If SB 163 was truly equitable, it would be amended to cover repair to organs, not just destruction. When a person is unhappy with a surgical procedures and decides to detransition. Before we consider mandating private insurance companies to cover irreversible interventions on minor children, SB 163 needs to be amended to protect children and young adults from predatory medical providers, especially since children and teens often outgrow the trans phase. Yet the damage from trans medical procedures lasts forever. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 763, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Harris, and I reside in Reno. As a 70-year-old woman with no children, I object to this bill. I will be forced to increase payments to my insurers to cover this procedure. I believe if you're going to offer this and make it mandatory, then it should be up to the payees, in this case, or either case, to check the box that we want this service and I am willing to pay for it. I am still paying for maternity care, even though I am past childbearing age. My other concern is I believe we can support other educational services to educate these young people and their parents about the tragic possibilities of happening. We all tend to say well, it'll never happen. Everything will go good in my surgery, etc. Well, sometimes it doesn't. And once these surgeries are done, you cannot reverse it. Therefore, I believe this bill should be voted no, should be referred back to committee. Let's do some more studies. And if it does merit, come back 2 years from now. There are a lot of services available to help the communities that do want to go and have gender changing surgeries or whatever pronouns in case. However, I object to us, taxpayer, paying for it, and number two, forcing private enterprises to do this if they want to have lucrative services. So therefore, as a tax-paying citizen here in Reno, I urge you to oppose SB 163. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Teresa DeGraffenreid, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Ms. Chapman mentioned a Swedish, that Sweden had a Swedish study that had halted and had stopped some of the gender reassignment surgery. Sweden, the first country to introduce legal gender reassignment, has begun restricting gender reassignment hormone treatments for minors. It is like many Western countries grappling with the high sensitive issue. Sweden decided in February of 2022 to halt hormone therapy for minors, except for in very rare cases. And in December, the National Board of Health and Welfare said mastectomies for teenage girls wanting to transition should be limited to a research setting. The uncertain state of knowledge called for caution. Board department head said in a statement in December, so-called puberty blockers have been in use in young teens contemplating gender reassignment transition to delay the onset of unwanted physical changes. Like many other countries, Sweden has seen a sharp rise in cases of gender dysphoria, a condition where a person may experience distress as a result of their belief in mismatch between their biological sex and the gender they identify as. So I would propose that we kind of slow down the roll on this kind of thing and vote no on this bill. SB 163. Thank you.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony, in neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Senate Bill 163? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. I know the senator had to go to floor, and so I will now close the hearing on Senate Bill 163. 1 minute recess. Committee will come back from recess. We are going to open up for work session at this time. We will be work sessioning Senate Bill 163, which requires certain health insurance to cover treatment of certain conditions relating to gender dysphoria and gender incongruence. We have received permission from Speaker Yeager. And with that, committee members, are there any questions? I don't think so. I will take a motion to do pass.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Howdigi. I have a second from Assemblywoman Torres. Any discussion on the motion? I don't see any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. Can you please raise your hands? I have a nay from Assemblyman Urich, a nay from Assemblywoman Kasama, a nay from Assemblywoman Hardy, and I have a nay from Assemblyman O'Neill. Motion passes. I will assign that floor statement to Assemblywoman Backus. And with that, we will close our work session, and we are in recess.